SaaS Backwards is sponsored by Austin Lawrence Group, specializing in demand gen for SaaS. It sure is noisy. I deleted 100 emails from vendors just this morning. Your buyer has gotten better at ignoring you, and you're gonna need a big idea if you want to cut through all that clutter. Austin Lawrence is just the right agency to help you find it. So if your campaigns are falling on deaf eyeballs, let's talk. Visit austinlawrence.com today and let's build something bigger.
Welcome to the SaaS Backwards podcast, where we reverse engineer the success of fast-growing SaaS firms and explore strategies CMOs and CEOs are using to drive their businesses forward.
Welcome to SaaS Backwards, a podcast that helps SaaS CMOs and CEOs to accelerate growth and enhance profitability. Our guest today is Yosh Eisbart, co-founder and CEO at Fullfilld, a location-aware warehouse management orchestration platform combining cloud-native SaaS and proprietary hardware to optimize warehouse operations. Hey, Yosh, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Ken, for having me. Excited to talk and to chat about SaaS.
Thanks. And before we do dig in about your SaaS journey and your company, tell us a little bit about yourself and the company.
Absolutely. So I'm Yosh Eisbart, based out of the Rocky Mountains, specifically Denver, Colorado. And I've been out here for about 20 years. My business partner and I started Fullfilld in 2020 amidst the COVID timeframe. And Fullfilld is really an evolution of a previous company that my business partner and I, Michael Pytel, bootstrapped and co-founded in 2009 during actually the Great Recession. So Mike and I have great timing in starting companies at the bottom of the trough. That way we got nowhere but up. So just 2 seconds on our past company, because I think it has a lot of relevance in what we're doing now. So our last company, we started in 2009, an enterprise software and services company, also based out of Colorado. We focused on the enterprise software and services space. Company was and is still called Nimble. It's still around, still doing great. And what we would do back in the Nimble days is we would resell enterprise software, primarily a product called SAP. We would implement the software. We would provide 24/7, 365 post-production support for their business critical enterprise applications. And what we'd often do is we would build bespoke, customer-specific warehouse management and logistics complementary software that would enhance core SAP warehousing inventory management functionality. We sold that company in 2018 and we exited in 2020. And what we never did, though, back in those 10 plus years at Nimble is we never brought that specific IP to market. And that's what we're doing now. So a lot of lessons learned from those days back implementing for companies like Nestle and Pepsi and Exxon and Cintas. And we're leveraging those lessons learned and a lot of mistakes with Fullfilld.
That's really interesting. I mean, we encounter a lot of CEOs at SaaS startups who are subject matter experts. And so really what you did at Nimble was build this great expertise that you could roll out into a new product. And we've also seen there's a whole ecosystem of these optimizations of these large enterprise softwares. A friend of mine who used to work in the accounting side of the ERP space used to call those things snowflakes. And so there you are in snow country making a business out of this augmentation idea. That's awesome. But it's a whole solution, right? So you're addressing a space. I think it'd be good to talk just a little bit about what the problem is that you're trying to solve, and then we can dig into some of the questions I have for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the problem we're trying to solve right now is obviously tremendously pertinent to the supply chain, logistics, and warehousing challenges that we've been experiencing over the last several years. When we thought about this idea of building a location-aware warehouse management orchestration platform, this predated COVID. And I got to give full credit to Michael. Michael is one of those beautiful minds. He is, a super deep thinker, and he's the technologist. And we often say that he's the brain and I'm the mouth. And so, Mike's idea of bringing the ability to identify the location of a product, a person, a connected device, such as an automated vehicle or a drone or an ASRS or an ASM, these types of automation enhancement robots or automation, if you will, into the warehouse visibility was something he came up with quite some time ago. And none of the existing warehouse management softwares or WMSs have a real-time location aware functionality. And so what that means is, in essence, is that we paint via ultra wideband and cellular 5G, 4G. We paint a digital twin of the physical warehouse and we digitize that and we ingest that into our software. And what that enables Fullfilld to do is we are able then to identify down to 10 centimeters of accuracy and up to 26 times a second the beehive movement of the activity within the warehouse. And what's super important about that, and is a major differentiation, is that through all that rich location data, we're able then to provide artificial intelligence and machine learning recommendations on how to do things better in the warehouse. And some of those examples may include optimizing labor. So if you have a warehouse worker, which typically, in these warehouses, and we're serving the same exact SaaS customers we did back in the Nimble days. So again, leveraging a lot of the learnings we had in our past life, selling to the same customers, selling to both mid-market and Fortune 1000 globally. We're able to, with this example of the warehouse worker, typically in some of these scenarios, a warehouse worker would print out or have a pick list of different products that they would need to pick out for, let's say, a delivery. And typically this information is static, and maybe it's even printed out on a piece of paper of these are the 12 things you got to pick in the warehouse over the next hour. What that static information does not tell is what are the optimal ways, as one example, to be able to walk through the warehouse, to minimize footsteps, to save time, et cetera, et cetera. So long-winded, and again, apologies, I'm a sales guy, but the problem we're really trying to solve is what are the optimization opportunities in the warehouse for the mid-market that currently are not being served in existing SaaS products.
Yeah. And I think that's, comes from understanding the market, right? So you spent the better part of 10 years in this market, and it just makes sense that you would evolve with it. And I think that's a really great use case. I think this idea of being real time and location aware, how much of an innovation is that? How much of a change does that enable in terms of costs or, the amount of work that can get done?
So from a mid-market, and we define mid-market as SAP defines mid-market because, we speak Japanese, and not only were we in this space for the last 10 years, but we were also in the same space for 10 years previous. So we've been in the enterprise software space, since the mid-90s. And, the location awareness right now does not exist in the primary upper Magic Quadrant warehouse management platforms. So our competition, which they have no idea that we exist because we're a startup and we've been around for about 2 years, those are the big dogs like the Manhattans or the SAP EWMs or the Blue Yonders or the High Jumps. Some of these companies obviously have tremendous resources. They have, whether it's capital or experience or employees, and some of them are trying to put in some type of digital twin functionality. For them, it's static, meaning that it's a snapshot in time, and it doesn't then really capture how a warehouse worker, how a drone, how a robot is flowing through the warehouse. And that's when the magic can really happen. The magic can happen real time. And so the Amazons of the world, and just on a side note for a shameless plug, one of our investors is a fellow by the name of Jeff Wilkie. Jeff was the number 2 over at Amazon, reporting directly into Jeff Bezos from when he started all the way through 2020. And he's the genius and the architect and the mastermind behind all of the warehousing and logistics and supply chain. And when he left, he was the CEO for many years of Global Consumer, which included Marketplace and Prime and Whole Foods, et cetera. So answer your question, the magic of this real time is very innovative. And the other products out there, they just don't have it as parcel ground up as part of their product.
I think you also have some kind of business model innovation here where it's an all-in-one solution. And I feel like this is a place for software companies to maybe take a note. Most of them want nothing to do with the hardware side of their client experience. But in your case, it maybe eases the path to adoption that you're including hardware required to run the solution, right? So it's all OpEx, not a CapEx play. Can you talk about, how that actually plays out in the sales situation? So I think that's a possibility for other SaaS leaders to take a look at.
Yeah, we think that it's definitely a differentiator. And we think that's also a path to quicker adoption because there's less friction within the sales process. Two software CEOs, three opinions. So definitely can differ. But what we do is exactly what you said. We are primarily an OpEx model where we are a bundled subscription of both hardware and software per user per month. And so for these mid-market organizations that really have heartburn over the cost associated with implementing a Manhattan, there are multiple sales cycles that the supply chain VP or the CFO or the CIO need to go through. And they're as follows. So first, you got to choose the software of choice. Then you need to choose an integrator in order to be able to implement that software. And then if you want to have handheld scanners, which normally come as part of actually a consulting integration component, you need then to choose, from your two flavors, more or less your Honeywells or your Zebras. What we do is we're really trying to flip that model on its head and going back again to our past life and hearing the pains of our customers, our friends who are saying, Yosh, this is brain damage. We've got to go through all of these sales cycles. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just choose a single provider that we trust that could drive this from soup to nuts? We're like, oh, wow, that's a great idea. And that's where some of the sales cycle special sauce came in for Fullfilld. So what we do is our product being cloud-based, integrating back into ERP, not only SAP, but also to Microsoft products, Oracle, Sage, etc. Our product is a more rapid deployment. And so our focus and vision is to deploy within 90 days. And we've already proven that to be the case for some big customers already. And our handheld scanner then can be part of that process of monthly subscription. We also do have the ability to, if a customer, let's say, has already deployed a whole host of capital to existing handheld scanners, we've got the ability to deploy our app on those scanners. So anyways, to answer your question, our nirvana for these mid-market customers is to be a one-stop shop of both hardware and software, primarily OpEx versus CapEx.
It's interesting because we've definitely seen young companies struggle with time to revenue. And this seemed like a way, if your software has any real world interface that can be part of that solution, this might be a good thing to learn from. That brain damage you talked about of the multiple sales cycles your clients would have to go through is also bad for the SaaS, right? Because you're waiting another 3, 6, 9 months for them to get it all together before you can start charging them, plus the integration work that might be required. So if you can have a solution that incorporates that hardware side, might be an interesting opportunity. So I just thought it was something unique to point out. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about, you took in recent funding. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And I wanted to just kind of ask you to walk through your decision-making on going for the funding round, the uses of funding, what you as a founder looking ahead, how the outside world is imposing itself on your plans for deploying that capital.
Yeah. Venture capital is a space that, quite frankly, being radically candid, in many a case is necessary evil for those that don't have the capital to be able to deploy something or to build something, quite frankly, build something. Our last company was self-funded and it was easier. It was easier because it was more heavy towards the services as opposed to building software. And so in order to be able to scale, it didn't require us taking outside money. This one is a different story. We are building a complex, business critical warehouse management orchestration platform that could provide real-time system directed tasking between human and non-human labor. There's a hardware component. We need to ensure that as part of the software, we've got all of the SOC 2 Type 2 compliance. We need to be blessed by a CISO. I mean, and there's so much there. And so, quite frankly, we didn't really have the luxury of self-funding. For those CEOs out there or founders out there that have the ability to self-fund, I think, quite frankly, that is, as a generalization, is the way to go. And it's not so much the VCs that are part of our cap table are overly challenging or difficult to work with. We're lucky, and we also were able to pick those that could be part of our investment pool. And different investment groups provide different value based upon, what they bring to the table. So there's a whole concept of smart money. And I didn't really know what that meant until I got into the VC world. And the definition of smart money, as best as I understand, is that not only do the venture capitalists bring the dry powder or bring the capital, but they also bring something else that can really provide extra oomph, extra value. And in some cases, some of our VCs have been amazing when it comes to strategy around financial planning. Some of our VCs have been amazing when it comes to educating us on the world of venture capital and what it means to do a safe note versus a convertible debt versus a Series A versus a cap and blah, 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 blah. And some have been amazing in regards to driving customer business development. So we've raised up until this point north of 7 million. The first two rounds were via a safe note. And recently, last month, we closed a Series seed with a price round. And the lead investor is an amazing VC, and I mean this wholeheartedly, out of the Midwest, called Heartland Ventures. And what Heartland has brought has been that customer business development. And for us as founders who aren't 2, 3 guys, gals, and a dog and kombucha sleeping on a couch, what we really needed was less about, how do we build the business, but help us get customers as quickly as possible, because, revenue solves all. And Heartland has already, even previous to the close of this Series seed in November, for the previous 6 months, just getting to know us, have driven customer meetings around prospective business opportunities. So long-winded answer, Ken, I apologize. But
That's awesome.
The VC space has been interesting.
The idea that Heartland in their get to know you was introducing you to opportunity sort of speaks also to how it's sort of like a real world due diligence, right? It's not just spreadsheets and looking at their own insight.
Absolutely.
They had a chance to see you guys in action and kind of decide for themselves if they wanted to come along for the ride. I think that's very cool.
And that's one thing, I double click on that. And I think for, the SaaS founders or CEOs, if you're speaking to prospective institutional investors and they're asking to get you on a call with some of their folks in network, whether it's a limited partner who may be a customer and or a business and a limited partner in the investment fund, that is a true litmus test and a true due diligence where not only can they bring the customers to the table, but they're really doing the work beyond Excel and gut to better understand your business model, not so much from their due diligence, but from the due diligence of the experts that are actually going to leverage the product. So that was a big aha. And that was one where we're like, giddy up. We want these guys bad. And thank God it was mutual.
That's very cool. Maybe it'd be good to talk a little bit about your go-to-market, because you have more than one. It's talking about giddy up. You have sort of more than one horse in the race here. As I understand it, you have partners, you have direct sales. You're looking to expand maybe to systems integrators. Can you talk about your view for how you're going to drive revenue at Fullfilld?
We're going to try to drive revenue. Nah, I was going to come up with a bad joke, like, any way we can. Somewhat true and somewhat not true. I think as a startup, being able to see some W's and some revenue, either through references or through direct, is super important for many reasons. One, you got to build the traction, and everything comes down to really those first 5 customers. I think the first 5 customers are always the toughest. And we're in a crowded market. We're in a market where there are incumbents that have been there, again, that have tremendous resources, piles of money, global development centers, strong references, certification and accreditation, and or blessing from leading analysts like Gartner and Forrester, and we don't have that yet. And so our model initially has been, because I believe as the head of sales, that no one in their right mind, understandably so, is going to go to us as a generalization to put their business critical application in the hands of a startup. We need to go to folks that either have high tolerance for innovation, that are interested in proof of concepts to be able to prove out to themselves the long-term opportunity via a short-term, not short-term, but lower cost pilot, or to go to those folks that you have within your network that know you, trust you, and you look in the eye and can tell Mark, hey, Mark, we're going to get her done. And he knows that you're going to get it done. So ironically enough, the first set of customers have not been those that we've worked with before. We're working with an EV company that heard of us back in the day, but never worked with us. They had implemented a competitor. They are challenged with how the competitor is designed and delivering value. And so what they wanted us to do was to complement their existing EWM solution to then build the proof case to say, yep, here's the innovation that's happening. Let's move forward. In another case where we're going live this week, or went live on Monday, that was a big brand name, globally recognized customer that has a smaller business unit that right now is leveraging pen and paper and spreadsheets. So for them to implement—
Not a lot of leverage there.
True story. And as part of the business case, for us to provide value by putting in some type of system, not even so much on the future vision of all the innovation that can be provided, but just baseline strong WMS, they were super excited to be able to start with one warehouse out of 130. To answer your question, though, we have a multi-pronged approach on how we're going to market. We're always going to have a component which is strategic sales, and that's our internal sales force, where we are leveraging BDRs and SDRs and thought leadership through webinars and industry papers and conferences, et cetera, to be able to drive recognition, as well as, leveraging connection, network, existing relationship. That's one thing, as well as we continue to scale, and there's a customer that's just so tremendously important, whether it's new innovation that we want to build with, whether it's a logo that's just so well known that we want to white glove that one. That's one method. The other method, as you alluded to, is channel. And we feel that the only proper way to scale to be in the tens of millions, the hundreds of millions in revenue, is to leverage a channel network where you have other folks, whether that are the SIs, whether that's global SIs like the Deloittes and the CAPs and the Accentures and the NTTs, whether it's that next tier down who maybe specialize in ERP, whether that's like the Intelligences or the Syntaxes or what have you, those that have spent a lot of time in the SAP space and understand that mid-market. They're the ones that have direct relationship with the customers, and what will motivate them will be a resell of Fullfilld as the bundled monthly subscription of hardware and software, as well as a minimal implementation cost. Our cost right now is nowhere near in comparison to, again, the larger scales WMSs. And then the potential for some support moving forward, whether that's, a tier one overlay of managed services above and beyond what our core product is. That probably isn't going to be that way for a long time, because as a SaaS-based product, our product is meant to be highly configurable, not customized, but configurable by the end client, and less about a consultant coming in. And that data point, again, was lessons learned from past life, where we as Nimble, we would resell software, we would implement, and we also had to manage services. So those are two paths. And then the third path that we are working on are technology agnostic business process consulting firms, those that specialize in supply chain logistics and warehousing. They are the ones that are rubbing shoulder to shoulder with CEOs and SVPs of logistics, where, an SVP of warehousing is saying, we're having a real hard time with turnover. We have a customer right now that brings in, as an example, 100 warehouse workers a month to train. And by the end of 3 months, that group has turned over 120%. So what our product does as an example is that because our user experience is intuitive and it is almost like an app you'd find on the App Store, it doesn't require a tremendous amount of training for a warehouse worker. And so customers are excited about being able to quickly implement and gain value so that the ramp up time is not, 2 months, but, could be, 2 days.
Hey, I want to talk about this proposition of the young company selling such a strategic solution. How do you get past the risk aversion? And you did say they have to have an appetite to innovate, right? So there are folks just might not fit for. But how are you positioning this? Hey, we're going to innovate. We're going to, essentially re-engineer your warehouse, the heart of your business, and yet we're a 2-year-old company. How do you position against that?
So there are a couple ways that we attack that. For some large organizations, global brands, they have such a heterogeneous environment from warehousing or ERP or e-commerce or whatever. As much as they would like to homogenize and get to a single platform or a single product suite like a SAP or an Oracle, it just rarely happens. So in that scenario, you've got outliers, if you will, that might not be converted over to the long-term vision for multiple years. So one wedge is, we're talking to again global brands where they're rolling out a WMS and it's a 7-year timeline, but their division in Brazil is so far down the path and they want to show innovation that's a scenario we're in discussions where we see you rolling out SAP EWM and Brazil is not going to be on the roadmap till 2026. What if we were to do a deployment there to see what type of value we could? So that's one way. One is there white space within a larger organization? And we've been finding traction there. The other scenario is in the mid-market. While we are young, there are cost challenges associated with implementing some of our competitors. And whether that's just the product itself, which could be easily 4x, whether it's the implementation cost, which easily then could be, exponential above that, plus then having to invest in hardware, those are scenarios where there's a cost opportunity. And specifically, if they don't already run a WMS, we're able to provide some real value. And as part of that, in full candor, and I'm sure this is not prophetic or any aha moments for some of the folks that are listening, as a startup, we provide very attractive pricing models to be able to work with some of these early customers in order to be able to get those W's and get those references. So I think there's multiple ways to play it. And those are just two of the ones that we've been finding where we've been having some success.
I like the idea of the white space in the enterprise sale. That's a pretty smart play. It's a great sales play. I also think that in this mid-market, there's a lot more price pressure on them, right? So to be competitive, depending on the exact nature of the business, finding these efficiencies in the operations may be even more important.
The other thing which I failed to mention, I'm glad you triggered it for me, is our product as well does not need to be all or nothing. We don't need to implement Fullfilld as a full business critical warehouse management orchestration platform with both hardware and software, leveraging digital twin, connecting to a drone, connecting back to SAP S/4HANA Cloud. We don't have to. And so one of the ways that we're getting into some of these early customers is as a module. And so the customer is able then to see immediate value, meaning immediate like a quarter, as opposed to trying to bite off more. So we're right now talking to a customer out east that does aftermarket auto. And we just visited their 1 million+ square foot warehouse last week in Tennessee. Super impressive, actually tremendously innovative. I mean, they had vertical lift systems that they're implementing. They had automated robots that are helping ASMs. Plus they had a labor force of, hundreds of people all throughout the warehouse and forklifts going all around. I mean, it was like a Star Wars scene. It was super cool. Right now, they are looking to partner with a startup specifically to help them leapfrog some of their competition as opposed to kind of doing more of the same. And their leadership came from years and years of implementing some of our competitors. And while, they're tried and true, they need to differentiate, and they've got the power to be able to differentiate. So specific to them, we're in discussions right now of what is a quick win 3-month module that we could implement to show a W to the C-suite, with then the plan that when we're successful to be able to roll out more. So another play there, just to add on to the two spoken previously, is to implement via a subset of your functionality as opposed to trying to do, the entire software.
Yeah. And I love the idea of feeding into like a mandate to innovate, mandate to differentiate, because those things could even carry a price premium, right? You don't have to compete on price. You're now supporting a mandate and, a critical business function. I think that's a great place to land our episode. Yosh, I want to say thanks so much for joining us. And if people want to learn more about Fullfilld or get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, thank you, Ken. This has been great. I love talking about Fullfilld, and more so love talking about myself. If folks are interested in learning more about Fullfilld, please feel free to email us. I'll give you my personal email at Yosh at Fullfilld, FULFILLD.io. Our website is www.fulfilled.io. And I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And so, feel free to IM me or shoot out a connect.
Thanks very much. And if you want to reach me, I'm LinkedIn/in/Ken Lempit. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, please do so. Available pretty much wherever podcasts are distributed. And Yosh, thanks for making this a great episode. Look forward to talking with you again soon.
All the best. Be fulfilled.
Thanks for listening to the SaaS Backwards Podcast, brought to you by Austin Lawrence Group. We're a growth marketing agency that helps SaaS firms reduce churn, accelerate sales, and generate demand. Learn more about us at www.austinlawrence.com. You can email Ken Lempit at kl@austinlawrence.com about any SaaS marketing or customer retention subject. We hope you'll subscribe, and thanks again for listening.